You trained users on Copilot and your ticket queue got longer. Fascinating, you gave them decks, office hours, even a Q&A. They left smarter for 24 hours and then promptly asked, which Copilot do I use? Again, here's the truth. Training isn't a meeting, it's a system. If you don't deploy an evergreen governed learning center, you're funding a help desk cosplay. In the next few minutes, I'll show you the model that cuts tickets, kills shadow docs, and centralizes governance. You'll get architecture, a deployment blueprint, and the KPIs that prove it's working. No live demo, real operations. Why your training fails for Copilot. Okay, so basically, you're running a static training program against a moving target. Copilot changes weekly. Your slides don't. Users forget. Copilot doesn't. That mismatch is the root cause. You trained for a product, you got a behavior engine, and yes, that matters. Here's what most people miss. Traditional adoption plans assume a linear skill path. Beginner, intermediate, advanced. Copilot isn't linear, it's conversational, context-dependent, and utterly sensitive to data boundaries and prompt quality. Teach once and you've taught nobody. Teach in flow, and you've covered 80% of daily confusion before it becomes a ticket. The average user fallacy makes it worse. When you optimize for the least prepared, you create lowest common denominator chaos. You water down prompts, hide nuance, and strip governance until it's harmless and useless. The result? Two groups: power users who ignore you and build their own shadow practices, and confused users who escalate loudly. Let's name the tickets you keep seeing. Number 1, where do I start? That's a discovery failure. Number 2, which Copilot? Outlook, Word, Teams, graph-grounded, studio-built. Users think Copilot is one thing. It's multiple surfaces and agents with different abilities and risks. Number 3, is this safe? Translation: you never surfaced data boundaries, transcript policies, or approved connectors where the user actually works. Number 4, why did it answer that? That's a prompt pattern problem plus retrieval context, not a Copilot is wrong issue. Enter the shadow training economy. Decks in Teams, PDFs in chats, wiki pages with heroic titles like Ultimate Copilot Guide V7 Final. No version control, no ownership, no retirement policy. The second you publish your official guidance, 5 unofficial copies spawn like gremlins after midnight. Now search returns contradictions, and your single source of truth is a folktale. Cause of confusion, increased tickets, inconsistent outputs, data risk, and, my favorite, executives questioning license spend because we aren't seeing ROI. You're burning time teaching prompt basics repeatedly while rogue agents multiply in unmanaged environments. And that's not adoption, it's entropy. Here's the weird part, you try to fix this with quarterly webinars. Users don't need scheduled lectures, they need answers where the question happens. In Word, in Teams, beside the compose box, if the guidance doesn't live inside the tools or at least one click away, it might as well be in a museum. Everything clicked when I realized Copilot adoption is an information architecture problem wearing a training costume. You're mopping the floor, answering tickets while the valve above is still leaking. Fix the valve, build an evergreen governed center that is tenant-aware, versioned, and findable. Then point everyone to it, relentlessly. In other words, stop pushing knowledge. Make it pullable, purposeful, and provably current. That means canonical pages with freshness badges, approved prompt patterns that explain why they work, and decision trees that route which Copilot are in under 3 clicks. It means surfacing transcript and privacy policy before someone dumps sensitive content into the chat and blames the tool. The simple version is this: if your training isn't a system with ownership, lifecycle, and telemetry, it will decay into Folklore. And Folklore scales beautifully into tickets. We're going to replace Folklore with a governed Copilot learning center that answers questions before they exist, deflects intents, and eliminates the oxygen that shadow training needs to survive. Now let's build the thing you should have started with. What the Copilot Learning Center actually is: architecture. Okay, so basically this isn't a SharePoint site with some links. It's a governed, tenant-aware hub that centralizes Copilot know-how, artifacts, and safe usage patterns, and then makes them unavoidable. It's the spine of Copilot adoption, not content decoration, structure. Think of it like an airport, not a bulletin board. Gates, security, signage, and air traffic control. People move because the system routes them. Enter the center, a modern SharePoint hub for the terminal, SPFX web parts for the gates, PNP modern search for the signage, and a governance layer for, yes, security. You don't visit it, you operate through it. Foundation first. Modern SharePoint gives you a fast, responsive canvas with native Teams integration. We use a hub site, so every child site inherits navigation, theme, and governance. That hub hosts 3 core areas: learn, do, and govern. Learn is curated knowledge. Do is the prompt and agent directory. Govern is policy upfront where users actually see it, not buried in compliance archaeology. Now the components. SPFX web parts do the heavy lifting, directory cards for Copilot Studio agents, role-based prompt galleries, and context banners that show environment scoping. Why SPFX? Because it's tenant-aware, fast, and deploys across SharePoint, Teams tabs, and Viva connections without iframes. You want one code bundle that shows up everywhere. That's called efficiency, which the average user rarely rewards you for, but leadership does. Discovery is where projects live or die. We implement PNP Modern Search as the findability engine. Taxonomy matters. Tags for Surface, Word, Outlook, Teams, Graph. Function, summarize, generate, analyze. Role, sales, finance, HR, and risk, internal, external, regulated. Scopes are all my team and org, so a seller sees approved prompts for their role first, not a random deck from 2023. Result templates render cards with freshness badges, owner, and last audited, so trust is visible. Content sources aren't a mystery grab bag. We aggregate Microsoft Learn and Viva learning feeds into Learn with clear provenance labels. Official, community, internal. Community pathways are allowed, not authoritative. Internal SOPs and role guides get lifecycle rules, draft, peer review, publish, retire. Monthly refresh cadence with audit trails. If it doesn't have an owner and an expiry date, it doesn't go live. You're welcome. The AI file directory is your single source of truth for Copilot Surface assets and studio agents. Each entry is an object with fields. Owner, environment, data policies, connectors, purpose, what good looks like, and red lines. Include usage notes and telemetry links. Add a try button for safe sandboxes, and a request access flow that routes through RBAC, not wishful thinking. Governance isn't a footer, it's the front door. Surface transcript retention, privacy policies, and data boundaries on every relevant page via a header component. Approved connectors are listed with tooltips, allowed, conditional, blocked. Show examples of disallowed asks in red text. No one reads policy, everyone remembers a vivid "don't do this" example. The truth, fear, precisely applied, is a marvelous control. Just in time matters. Use Viva connections to pin the center into Teams. Add deep links next to compose boxes. Help me write safely that opens role-specific prompt patterns with copy and run buttons. Context pages embed directly in Teams channels. If a user has to leave their flow to learn, they won't, then they'll file a ticket. Then you'll complain. We can avoid all three. Evergreen is non-negotiable. Set a content lifecycle, monthly refresh waves, version badges, and auto-retire rules. SPFX shows freshness status inline, reviewed 12 days ago versus stale 94 days. Owners get nudges, stale pages get demoted in search. Shadow training dies when canonical pages outrank everything else and stale links redirect home. Ownership is explicit. Each page has a named owner, a backup, and an SLA. Changes are logged. Users can see what changed without a scavenger hunt. That transparency buys trust, which buys deflection. In other words, centralize before you evangelize. You can't govern what you can't see, and you can't scale what you can't find. Build the airport. Then the planes, your users, actually land where they're supposed to. How it fixes tickets and shadow training mechanics. Okay, so basically we stop answering random questions and start deflecting intents. Ticket volume drops when users can map what I want to where I click without opening Outlook to beg it. We do that with 3 levers: intent mapping, canonical answers, and visible freshness. Intent mapping first. Tie your FAQ to actual queries, not what you think users ask. Passes search logs and tickets into 4 routes. Start, which Copilot, is it safe, and why that answer. Each route has a landing page with 2 assets, a decision tree and a prompt exemplar. Decision tree chooses path in under 3 clicks. Prompt exemplar shows what good looks like and the anti-pattern beside it. Users don't need theory, they need contrast. Which Copilot becomes a guided choice. Surface, role, data sensitivity. 3 toggles. The page updates live, use Teams for meeting notes, Outlook for triage, Word for long form, and use the studio agent when you need line of business context with approved connectors. And yes, it spells out when not to use anything, because do nothing is sometimes the safest action. Just-in-time guidance kills the "where is that deck" behavior. Embed context pages in Teams. Add a help me write link near compose surfaces that opens a role-based prompt with copy and run. Not just the prompt, also the why it works note. It sets intent, scope, and constraints. It names data sources. It avoids leading instructions. Underneath the red box, don't do this, with a tempting but unsafe example. You're welcome. The prompt library is opinionated. Every approved prompt has 4 fields: purpose, anatomy, variations, and failure modes. Purpose is the one-line job. Anatomy labels each clause so users can remix without breaking it. Variations show tone or role tweaks. Failure modes explain why it went weird. Ambiguous verbs, missing context, hallucination traps, plus the quick fix. Copy and run buttons respect role and data boundaries. If you don't have access, you see the request access path, not a 403 surprise. Shadow training dies when canonical answers outrank everything else and stale content self-destructs. We do both. Canonical pages get hub-level priority and search boosting. Legacy links get redirected into the relevant canonical page with a banner. This resource was archived. Here's the current guidance. Side wikis, they don't get deleted, they expire. Auto-expire rules flag and demote anything without a current owner or review. You can keep your hobby blog. It just won't mislead people at scale. Ownership clarity prevents who maintains this. Theater. Every page shows owner, backup, SLA, and freshness. The badge is blunt. Green, reviewed 30 days. Amber, 3190. Red, stale 90. Tickets triggered from a red page route to the owner with a nudge to refresh. Users see the same badge, so they trust green, question amber, and avoid red. That transparency deflects, is this still current? Emails before they exist. Safety scaffolding is not a PDF, it's everywhere. Data boundaries sit at the top of decision pages. Approved connectors list allows conditional and blocked with reason codes. Transcript retention policy appears before the first chat, not after a breach. Red line examples show prohibited asks. People remember, don't upload patient data, full stop, more than paragraph 7. A of your policy, use the frontal cortex, not compliance theater. Adoption nudges keep the loop alive. Each page ends with, was this helpful? A 2-click micro-survey with an optional, what was missing? Text. Ask an expert escalates to a governed queue with categories mapped to owners. Weekly triage reviews the hits and misses. Monthly refresh ships fixes. Publish the changelog. Users see you listening and they stop writing their own guides to compensate. The truth? You don't reduce tickets by telling people to stop opening tickets. You reduce tickets by beating the ticket to the answer, making that answer obvious, current, and safe, and by making every unofficial copy worse than the real thing on purpose. Case study, before, after results and governance wins. Baseline first. One enterprise, thousands of Copilot licenses, looked busy and learned nothing. Ticket queue, dominated by 4 themes. Start, which Copilot is it safe, why that answer? Guidance lived everywhere. Teams wikis, slide decks, PDFs with heroic file names. Owners? Unknown. Review dates? Fictional. Users searched, found contradictions, and escalated. Shadow agents appeared in random environments with mystery connectors. Leadership's question was predictable. Where's the ROI? Intervention was not a pep talk. We deployed the Copilot Learning Center hub, learn, do, govern, pinned in teams. We shipped an opinionated FAQ mapped to intents, a role-based prompt library with copy and run, and an agent directory with owner, environment, and data policy fields. PNP Modern Search boosted canonical pages. Legacy links redirected with archived, see current guidance banners. Every page showed owner, backup, SLA, and a freshness badge. Governance moved from PDF to page header, transcript retention, approved connectors, and red line examples. Outcomes? The trend is the story. Ticket deflection rose week over week because answers lived where questions occurred. Search success increased as users landed on decision trees that resolved which Copilot in under 3 clicks. Duplicate artifacts decayed. Side wikis without owners auto-expired and dropped from results. The prompt library became the gravitational center. High reuse on roll start pages, fewer it-hallucinated complaints because failure modes were explicit, plus fixes. Engagement wasn't vanity, it was directional. Unique visitors concentrated on start here, which Copilot, and 3 role guides. Time on page stabilized at read then act lengths, not doom scroll. Microsurveys produced 2 types of feedback, missing variations and clearer boundary examples. We shipped both in the monthly refresh. The changelog proved movement. Users learned to return because the content actually evolved. Governance wins were measurable. Rogue agents slowed as makers realized there was a sanctioned directory with an access path and visibility. Environment routing got respected. High-risk agents moved into managed environments with the right DLP. Transcript guidance stopped being apocrypha and became a pre-chat reality. Fewer we shouldn't have pasted that events occurred because the page yelled politely before the paste. Cultural shift is the quiet victory. The reflex changed from ask it to check the center. Even power users participated, submitting prompt variations through the contribution flow instead of publishing folklore in private channels. Ownership clarity killed the who maintains this? Theater. Green badges earned trust, amber badges triggered helpful nudges, red badges were rare and embarrassing, precisely the point. Lessons learned because you'll repeat these mistakes unless I stop you. Over-index on findability. Taxonomy and scopes make or break relevance. Guesswork inflates tickets. Declare what's deprecated with ruthless redirects. Don't negotiate with link rot. Publish role-based starting paths. Generic guidance invites generic errors. Instrument everything. Search terms, click through, bounce. The loop tells you what to fix next month. Now the payoff you were promised. The governance switch that collapses shadow training. We set a centralized discovery policy, Teams app, pin, plus the SharePoint hub as the authoritative entry point. All Copilot-related content lives under that information architecture. No SideWiki exceptions. Legacy links resolve to canon. Non-hub pages display warning banners and auto-archive rules prune the rest. You don't chase folklore, you starve it of oxygen. The governance switch that collapses shadow training. Here's the switch. Mandate a single discovery surface. Not a suggestion. A policy. Pin the Learning Center as a Teams app for everyone and set the SharePoint hub as the authoritative entry point. Every path starts there. The cognitive tax of where do I look drops to zero, and your search relevance stops fighting 12 competing wikis with heroic file names. Policy next. All Copilot-related content, guides, prompts, agent docs, FAQs, lives under the hub's information architecture. No side wiki exceptions, no temporary decks in random teams, no private channel PDFs. If it's not in the hub, it isn't official. That binary line is how you kill folklore without kicking over culture. Enforcement is boring and beautiful. First, link governance. Redirects from legacy URLs route into the canonical page automatically. Users follow a stale link, they land on the right answer with a banner explaining the change. Second, warning banners on non-hub content. This page is not authoritative, view the current guidance. Third, auto-archive rules. Content without an owner or review date gets flagged, demoted in search, and queued for archival. You don't delete history, you remove it from the decision path. Roles and RBAC keep the machine honest. Name owners for every area. Learn, do, govern, plus each role guide and each agent entry. Owners have backups. Quarterly reviews are non-negotiable. They happen on a calendar, not vibes. Telemetry drives pruning. Low-click pages either get fixed, merged, or retired. High-friction searches trigger content creation. And yes, owners lose privileges if they ghost their SLA. Accountability isn't meanness, it's maintenance. DLP alignment is not a footnote, it's the prologue. Surface data policies at the top of relevant pages in plain language with examples. Can summarize internal emails. Can't paste customer PII. Conditional external sharing via approved connector. Include redline examples that trip alarms on purpose with the why. The average user doesn't memorize policy codes. They remember simple, vivid boundaries delivered at the moment of intent. KPIs tell you if the switch worked. Watch the topic mix of tickets shift from basics to advanced. Track time to answer via hub navigation. 3 clicks or fewer for 70% of Copilot questions is the target. Monitor stale content rate trending down. Freshness badges should skew green by month 2. Search success rate should climb as which Copilot. Decision trees cannibalize confusion. Rogue doc decay becomes a line on your dashboard, not a rumor in a channel. The counterintuitive part, centralization, increases contribution. When people know where the canon lives, they submit improvements instead of publishing side lore. Your contribution flow makes that painless. Propose a change, attach evidence, route to owner, publish with a changelog. Credit contributors visibly. Social proof fuels governance far better than a stern memo. And yes, there's a cultural nudge. Set your default help guidance in Teams to open the center. Include the center in onboarding, performance enablement, and quarterly business reviews. When leaders ask, what's new with Copilot, they get the changelog link, public, dated, and mercilessly brief. The message lands, answers live here, evolve here, and nowhere else. Flip the switch and starve shadow training on purpose. KPI Playbook, proving it worked. Okay, so basically you need numbers that end arguments. Start with North Star metrics, ticket deflection rate, unique visitors to the hub, prompt library reuse, and rogue doc decay. If those move in the right direction, everything else is commentary. Leading indicators prove direction early. Track search success rate, click through on which Copilot, and time on page for role start guides. If users resolve in 3 clicks or fewer 70% of the time, you're routing correctly. If they bounce, your taxonomy is wrong. Fix it, not them. Lagging indicators confirm behavior change, count fewer shadow assets, fewer duplicate agents, and higher was this helpful satisfaction. Tie those to telemetry. Are red badges disappearing and green badges holding? Good, evergreen is working. Targets, because hand-waving is for hobbyists, hit 30-40% deflection in 60-90 days. Convert 70% of Copilot questions in 3 clicks. Reduce stale content rate below 10% by month 2. Drive prompt reuse on top 5 role guides weekly. Instrumentation is lightweight and ruthless. SharePoint usage analytics, search logs, and a Power BI dashboard. Weekly triage, monthly refresh, quarterly governance audit. Publish the scorecard. Executives want license ROI. Show fewer tickets, faster answers, safer usage. Budget secured. The truth? If it's not on the dashboard, it didn't happen. Measure, fix, ship, repeat. Key takeaway. Training is an evergreen governed system that answers questions before tickets exist and starves shadow training of oxygen. If this clarified the path, deploy the learning center, lock the discovery switch, and run the KPI playbook. Then bring the numbers to leadership and collect your budget. Subscribe for the Governance First Copilot series, Agent Security, Environment Routing, and Telemetry next.